Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Week in 7 Questions. My name is Álvaro de la Cruz, and today is our 60th episode of the series. I am so happy to have with us today Nathan Shepura, American and senior political advisor at the European People's Party. Nathan, watching the Air Force One landing in Rome meant much more than usual to many Europeans. Can we expect to see the presidential 747 more frequently around here?
I think it's clear that President Biden and his team are committed multilateralists. And I also think it's clear that despite some setbacks along the way, they're committed to reinvigorated transatlantic partnership. So I think we will see him in Europe as often as he can reasonably visit. One important distinction, I think, is that transatlantic relations, transatlantic partnership for Biden and his team is not just for its own sake, let's say, but I think they really assess that the state of the world now needs democracies to come together, to rally together to combat the counter-authoritarianism. And so that's really the goal from the American side.
Now, it is well known that President Biden is a Catholic with a special relation with Pope Francis. But this meeting seemed like a powerful boost to EU's relations with a Catholic, mostly Atlantic world, didn't it?
President Biden is obviously proud of his Catholic heritage, of his Catholic faith. He's also proud of his Irish heritage. With regards to his Catholic faith, I think one thing we can say is that this shows not only common ground in terms of the transatlantic space, culturally speaking, but also common ground in terms of values, foremost human rights and the idea of the intrinsic worth of every human being, which comes at least largely from the Judeo-Christian tradition. So I think the amity that we see between him and the Pope is a reflection of that.
And even more promising was the encounter with French President Emmanuel Macron. Do you think the wounds of AUKUS are ready to be healed after the good tone shown by both presidents?
There's been a lot of very good work done, I think, in the several weeks, a month and a half or so, since AUKUS was announced in the middle of September. There was a positive joint statement on the 22nd of September, again on the 29th of October, following a bilateral meeting between Presidents Biden and Macron. I think the U.S. has reiterated its ongoing support for work in the Sahel to combat terrorism and for increased European efforts to bolster European defense as part of the Transatlantic Security Alliance. So I think there's a lot of positive momentum now. The important thing going forward will be the improvement in consultations and coordination.
France is the only remaining EU member state with a seat in the UN Security Council. Do you think it gives La République a privileged position in transatlantic relations?
Well, we should remember that France is, if not the oldest ally, certainly one of the oldest allies of the United States, going back to 1778. And since that time, there's been a very long and rich tradition of working together, of fighting together for a common cause. France, of course, is a big country with a big economy, with strategic capabilities, including nuclear weapons. As you mentioned, the only EU country now, after the departure of the United Kingdom, with a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Vice President Harris intends to visit in the coming weeks. And of course, one of the main priorities of the French presidency in the first half of 2022 looks to be transatlantic security and defense cooperation. So I think all of this speaks to the enduring and vital significance of the American-French alliance.
Europe's defensive tools and capabilities are still far from granting us this precious strategic autonomy. Is it a mutual EU-US effort for strengthening NATO in the short term possible?
I think definitely. The European Parliament in resolutions this year and following on an internal NATO assessment last year and in light of upcoming NATO and EU security assessments in the next few months, I think all speak to the fact that greater European defense capacity can definitely work with and should definitely work with NATO for an even stronger transatlantic security alliance.
We have just passed November 3rd, 1 year since the presidential election that put President Biden in power. What can Europe do to ensure transatlantic relations will be more important in the 2024 campaign and election?
One of the things I think we can say about American elections and about most elections probably around the world is that it is domestic politics and even local politics which drive the day. One of the areas of Biden's foreign policy thus far, which has broad bipartisan support across the US political spectrum, is his emphasis on the middle class, a foreign policy for the middle class, and also on a foreign policy which pushes back against China, both in terms of values, in terms of pushing back against authoritarianism, and also in terms of protecting American businesses, American workers against unfair practices, unfair trading practices, for example, coming from China. So I think these are going to be enduring priorities for the Biden administration and for not only the rest of this remaining Congress, but for the new Congress, which will be elected next November 2022. So these are definitely areas where I think there's a lot of room, a lot of scope for European American cooperation.
Finally, as an American living in Brussels for a few years now, what is best for an after-work snack? A cone of frites with a Belgian beer, or a DC Benz chili hot dog with Mountain Dew?
I would go for the combo. I would say chili cheese dog with a Belgian beer.
So thank you so much, Nathan. God bless. Thank you all for watching, and see you next week with another topical issue and surprise guest.